We are now on page 25 of 72. We're 33% of the way into the book, and I need a pee. Anyway.
"You have had a good look at the world now,"
said the old man.
"and if you will creep round this crag so as to get in its lee and deaden the roar of the water, I will tell you a story that will convince you I ought to know something of the Maelstrom."
I placed myself as desired, and he proceeded.
"Myself and my two brothers once owned a schooner-rigged smack of about 70 tons burthen, with which we were in the habit of fishing among the islands beyond Moscow, nearly to Berg."
I can't bother to talk like this. I'm just going to talk like a normal man.
"In all violent eddies at sea, there is good fishing, at proper opportunities, if one has only the courage to attempt it. But among the whole of the Lofoden coastmen, we three were the only ones who made a regular business of going out to the islands, as I tell you. The usual grounds are a great way lower down to the southward. There fish can be got at all hours, without much risk, and therefore these places are preferred. The choice spots over here among the rocks, however, not only yield the finest variety, but in far greater abundance, so that we often got in a single day what the more timid of the craft could not scrape together in a week. In fact, we made it a matter of desperate speculation, the risk of life standing instead of labour, and courage answering for capital. We kept the smack of a cove. We kept the smack in a cove, about 5 miles higher up the coast than this, and it was our practice in fine weather to take advantage of the 15 minutes slack to push across the main channel of the Maelstrom, far above the pool, and then drop down upon anchorage somewhere near Otterholm or Sandflesen, where the eddies are not so violent as elsewhere. Here we used to remain until nearly time for slack water again, when we weighed and made for home. We never set out upon this expedition without a steady side wind for going and coming, one that we felt sure would not fail us before our return, and we seldom made a miscalculation upon this point. Twice during the 6 years we were forced to stay all night at anchor on account of a dead calm, which is a rare thing indeed just about here. And once we had to remain on the grounds nearly a week, starving to death, owing to a gale which blew up shortly after our arrival, and made the channel too boisterous to be thought of."
Well, you're thinking of it now, aren't you? So apparently it wasn't too boisterous to be thought of.
"Upon this occasion, we should have been driven out to sea in spite of everything, for the whirlpools threw us round and round so violently that at length we fouled our anchor and dragged it. If it had not been that we drift into one of the innumerable cross-currents, here today and gone tomorrow, which drove us under the lee of Flyman, where, by good luck, we brought up."
Oi! The page went backwards. Stupid iPod.
"I could not tell you the 20th part of the difficulties we encountered on the grounds. It is a bad spot to be in, even in good weather, but we made shift always to run the gauntlet of the Maelstrom itself without accident, although at times my heart has been in my mouth, yum, when we happened to be a minute or so behind or before the slack. The wind sometimes was not as strong as we thought it at starting, and then we made rather less way than we could wish, while the current rendered the smack unmanageable. My eldest brother had a son 18 years old. Oh, great life story now. And I had 2 stout boys of my own. These would have been of great assistance at such times in using the sweeps as well as afterward in fishing. But somehow, although we ran the risk ourselves, we had not the heart to let the young ones get into the danger. For after all is said and done, it was a horrible danger, and that is the truth. It is now within a few days of 3 years since what I am going to tell you occurred. It was on the 10th day of July, 18, a day which the people of this part of the world will never forget, for it was one in which blew the most terrible hurricane that ever came out of the heavens, and yet all the morning, and indeed until late in the afternoon, there was a gentle and steady breeze from the south-west, while the sun shone brightly, so that the oldest seaman among us could not have foreseen what was going to follow. The 3 of us, my 2 brothers and myself, had crossed over to the islands about 2 o'clock p.m., and had soon nearly loaded the smack with fine fish, which, we all remarked, were more plenty that day than we had ever known them. It was just 7 by my watch when we weighed and started for home, so as to make the worst of the storm at slack water, which we knew would be at 8. We set out with a fresh wind on our starboard quarter, and for some time spanked along at a great rate. Yes, spanked along at a great rate, never dreaming of danger, for indeed we saw not the slightest reason to apprehend it. All at once we were taken aback by a breeze from from over Helseggen. This was most unusual, something that had never happened to us before, and I began to feel uneasy, without exactly knowing why. We put the boat on the wind, but could make no headway at all for the eddies, and I was upon the point of proposing to return to the anchorage, when, looking astern, we saw the whole horizon covered with a singular copper-coloured cloud that rose with the most amazing velocity. No. In the meantime, the breeze that had headed us off fell away, and we were dead becalmed, drifting about in every direction. This state of things, however, did not last long enough to give us time to think about it. In less than a minute the storm was upon us, in less than 2 the sky was entirely overcast, and what with this and the driving spray, it became suddenly so dark that we could not see each other in the smack. Such a hurricane as then blew it is folly to attempt describing. The oldest seaman in Norway never experienced anything like it. We had let our sails go by the run before it cleverly took us. But at the first puff both our masts went by the board as if they had been sawed off, the mainmast taking with it my youngest brother, who had lashed himself to it for safety. Our boat was the lightest feather of a thing that ever sat upon water. It had a complete flush deck, with only a small hatch near the bow, and this hatch it has always been our custom to batten down when about to cross the Strom. Fuck! Oops. Wait. Okay. By way of precaution against the chopping seas, but for this circumstance we should have foundered at once, for we lay entirely buried for some moments. How my elder brother escaped destruction I cannot say, for I never had an opportunity of ascertaining. For my part, as soon as I had let the foresail run, I threw myself flat on deck, with my feet against the narrow gunwale of the bow, and with my hands grasping a ring-bolt near the foot of the foremast. It was mere instinct that prompted me to do this, which was undoubtedly the very best thing I could have done, for I was too much flurried to think. For some moments we were completely deluged, as I say, and all this time I held my breath and clung to the bolt. When I could stand it no longer, I raised myself upon my knees, still keeping hold with my hands, and thus got my head clear. Presently our little boat gave herself a shake, just as a dog does in coming out of the water, and thus rid herself, in some measure, of the seas. I was now trying to get the better of the stupor that had come over me, and to collect my senses so as to see what was to be done. When I felt somebody grasp my arm. It was my elder brother, and my heart leaped for joy, for I had made sure that he was overboard. But the next moment all this joy was turned into horror, for he put his mouth close to my ear, and screamed out the word, Maelstrom! Oh! Tune in next time to find out what happens to the family. Oh, shit!